What if one of the most important development stories in Northeast Florida is not happening in downtown Jacksonville or along the beaches, but on a massive stretch of land quietly preparing for the region's next era of growth? In 2026, that conversation is increasingly centered around EverRange, a master-planned community project that is beginning to move from long-term vision into visible reality as its first neighborhood starts taking shape. For years, EverRange existed largely as an idea, an ambitious concept tied to strategic land positioning, long-range planning, and the possibility of creating an entirely new style of community within the Jacksonville region. But now, with the first residential phase beginning to emerge, the conversation is changing. The question is no longer simply, what is EverRange? Instead, people are beginning to ask something much larger. What could this become? That distinction matters because projects of this scale do not operate like traditional subdivisions. EverRange is not designed as a small collection of homes or a short-term residential expansion. It is being positioned as a large-scale, fully integrated master-planned environment intended to evolve over decades. The project is being developed by the PARC Group, a company already deeply connected to Northeast Florida's growth story through developments like Nocatee. That connection alone has drawn attention because Nocatee fundamentally changed how many buyers viewed community living in the Jacksonville area. It introduced a development model focused not only on housing, but on creating an ecosystem built around lifestyle, recreation, amenities, and long-term infrastructure planning. EverRange appears to be following that same philosophy, but potentially on an even larger scale. The vision centers around residential villages connected through trails, green space, recreation areas, and future commercial development, all tied together through coordinated planning from the very beginning. This reflects one of the most important shifts happening in modern Florida development, the move toward experience-driven communities. Buyers today are increasingly shopping for lifestyle rather than simply square footage or lot size. They want amenities integrated into daily life. They want walkability, recreational access, gathering spaces, and environments that feel intentionally designed rather than assembled piece by piece over time. EverRange is targeting exactly that market. The launch of the first neighborhood is particularly significant because early phases in master-planned communities often shape the identity and momentum of everything that follows. The initial residential sections establish buyer expectations, influence future pricing, and create the first wave of community culture. If those early phases succeed, they generate momentum that attracts additional builders, retail operators, and future residents. And momentum is essential in developments of this size. Large master-planned communities function almost like small cities. They require long-term coordination between developers, infrastructure systems, utility providers, schools, retail planning, and local governments. Roads must align with future growth. Utilities must support later phases. Parks, trails, and recreational spaces need to evolve alongside residential density. When executed properly, the result is an environment that feels cohesive and organized from the beginning rather than fragmented or reactive. That sense of intentional planning has become increasingly attractive to relocation buyers moving into Florida. Many incoming residents are arriving from larger metropolitan areas where convenience, predictability, and integrated living environments are highly valued. They want to know what future growth will look like. They want amenities already incorporated into the community design. They want modern infrastructure and recreational spaces built into daily life rather than added years later. Master-planned communities like EverRange deliver that structure in ways traditional suburban growth often does not. From a regional perspective, EverRange also signals something much larger about Northeast Florida's long-term trajectory. Projects at this scale require extraordinary levels of investment, planning, and patience. Developers do not commit massive land positions and infrastructure resources unless they believe population growth will remain sustainable for decades. That confidence says a great deal about how Jacksonville and the surrounding region are being viewed nationally. Northeast Florida continues attracting residents from across the country due to a combination of affordability, climate, economic growth, and lifestyle appeal. As migration continues, demand for large-scale residential environments remains strong, and EverRange is positioning itself to capture a significant portion of that future demand. The impact of projects like this extends far beyond housing. New residential communities create demand for retail, healthcare, schools, restaurants, and service businesses. As the first neighborhoods fill in, surrounding commercial development often accelerates rapidly. Grocery stores, fitness centers, medical offices, and dining concepts tend to follow rooftops, creating a broader ecosystem of economic activity. In that sense, EverRange is not simply a housing project. It is an economic development story. It is also an infrastructure story. Large master-planned communities frequently drive transportation improvements, utility expansion, and public infrastructure investments that reshape entire growth corridors. Northeast Florida has already experienced this pattern before. Nocatee dramatically influenced development trends in Ponte Vedra and St. Johns County over the past decade, transforming surrounding areas through a combination of residential growth and infrastructure investment. EverRange has the potential to generate a similar effect within its own corridor, if development unfolds as planned. Timing also plays an important role in why this project is attracting attention in 2026. Buyers today are increasingly selective. Interest rates, affordability pressures, insurance costs, and broader economic uncertainty have changed how people evaluate home purchases. In that environment, communities offering a stronger overall lifestyle package tend to stand out more clearly. Amenities and long-term planning become competitive advantages rather than optional features. Buyers who feel they are purchasing into a fully designed lifestyle environment are often more willing to justify premium pricing because the value extends beyond the house itself. That does not necessarily mean communities like EverRange will be accessible to every buyer. Early phases in highly anticipated master plan developments often trend toward higher price points, particularly when demand and excitement are strongest. However, these communities also tend to diversify over time. Additional builders, neighborhoods, and housing products are usually introduced across the later phases, expanding the range of options available to buyers. That phased evolution is part of what gives master-planned communities their long-term adaptability. Early residents often buy into the vision before all amenities and retail are complete. Later residents arrive once schools, shopping, and infrastructure are more established. Over time, the community develops its own culture and identity, which becomes one of its strongest assets. Identity matters more than ever in modern development. Buyers increasingly want to feel connected to where they live. Trails, community events, gathering spaces, and recreational amenities all contribute to that feeling of connection. EverRange appears designed around exactly that philosophy, emphasizing not just housing density, but lifestyle integration and long-term livability. Of course, projects of this scale always generate broader public conversations. Traffic impacts, environmental concerns, infrastructure strain, and long-term sustainability become central topics whenever major growth corridors emerge. Large developments must balance expansion with careful planning to ensure that supporting systems keep pace with residential density. These conversations are a normal part of large-scale development because communities like EverRange influence not only the people who live within them, but the surrounding region as well. Yet regardless of those debates, the launch of EverRange's first neighborhood marks an important moment in Northeast Florida's evolution. It represents confidence in the Jacksonville region's continued population growth. It reflects confidence in the long-term appeal of lifestyle-oriented, master-planned living. And it demonstrates confidence that buyers still want communities intentionally designed around modern preferences rather than older suburban models. As the first homes and neighborhoods begin taking shape, EverRange is transitioning from concept to reality. That transition matters because once visible progress begins, perception changes. Buyers begin imagining themselves there. Builders evaluate future opportunities. Retail operators consider long-term positioning. Momentum starts becoming tangible rather than theoretical. If the project evolves the way developers envision, EverRange could become one of the defining development stories in Northeast Florida over the next decade, not simply because of its size, but because of what it represents. This is not just about building houses. It is about building an entirely new community framework from the ground up, one designed around how people increasingly want to live in the future. Integrated amenities, connected infrastructure, recreational access, and long-term planning are becoming central to modern residential demand, and EverRange appears positioned directly within that trend. As Jacksonville continues expanding outward and evolving economically, projects like this will likely play a major role in shaping where people live, how communities function, and what the next generation of Northeast Florida development ultimately looks like. I'm Luke Christmas, and it's always Christmas when you work with Christmas Homes.